Today we're going to talk about the Porsche 911 964. The model that we're looking at the moment is an 89, which is a Carrera 4. We're going to get into some of that detail later. Just a few simple startup points. Production pretty much kicked off in 89 from a design that in fact was starting to be penned in the mid-80s. It is, which a lot of people don't know, by many accounts, the last of the air-cooled designs. The 993 that followed the 964 was in fact initially intended to be water-cooled. Porsche, for a number of reasons, some of which were financial, opted to keep the air-cooled motor in the 993, but ultimately the 993 was in fact designed to be a water-cooled car. So the 964 still retains 100% of the dimensions of the early cars that were in fact designed in the early 60s. So the glasswork, ultimately the monocoque chassis, as it were, is dimensionally exactly the same. And it's the last, in my view, of the classic 911s. Everyone is familiar with the fact that we have the integrated bumpers. It's a look that is, in my opinion, kind of very 90s, which is what we associate it with, and something which somewhat sadly hasn't been fully appreciated, I don't believe. But I do believe it's having its day. So the key changes to the car, given the fact that it was still fundamentally the same proportion as the earlier cars, really comes down to bumpers. The rear fenders, kind of left and right, are only marginally wider than a G series, as are in fact the front fenders. But what makes this car, in my opinion, very special is the fact that it is still diminutive. It is still a small, lithe 911, except of course that it carries all of the benefits of being kind of the last in the series. So it carries all of the improvements, and it's incredible how much these designers managed to cram into this car, given its small size, which we're going to cover to some extent. The car that you're looking at, color is always difficult to represent. This is in fact a British racing green, or as Porsche like to call it, a Porsche racing green. We stripped the car down, kind of nut and bolt, and redid the entire vehicle in this color. It was originally what is called Guards Red, in my view, retail red. A lot of 911s came out in red. We stripped the car down, changed its color, and undertook one or two key upgrades. So we at Dutchmann try to kind of minimize the amount of changes we make, and we always think very, very carefully about the kinds of changes which we do undertake. So on the 964, there are really, aesthetics aside, which we'll get to, really only two main kind of upgrades which we do. We will obviously do what we can in terms of setup. So we prefer to fit coilover suspension to our cars. It gives us the ability to within a kind of minute degree, adjust the setup. So the coilover suspension is one thing which we do. And incidentally, the standard suspension on a 964 is more than capable. It just doesn't quite give us the amount of tweaks which we're able to get the most out of the car on. It's probably a better kind of indication of what the color looks like. And that's the first thing. The second thing is we tend to fit lightweight flywheels and clutches. So the RS flywheel, or the 964 RS flywheel, made out of aluminium, a lot lighter, allows the motor to gain kind of revs very quickly. So we fit lightweight RS flywheels and clutches to the cars that we build. And other than that, we're not going to give away all our secrets, but that's fundamentally the key performance tricks which we tend to put in. Better suspension, better breathing, to get a little bit more air through the motor. And obviously there's a lot that one can do to the motor, but another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that these cars are incredibly well built in the first place. So as soon as you start pushing them too far, you start to lose on one end whilst you gain on the other. So we don't tend to try and push too much. They're very, very capable motors. Let's talk about the most important thing when it comes to these cars, which is the debate around the C4 versus the C2. So, should it have all-wheel drive, or should it in fact have the classic traditional two-wheel drive at the back? And what I find, frankly, quite entertaining is the ongoing debates regarding kind of Porsches that are two-wheel drive, especially the classic ones. I'm going to reserve this debate, or rather kind of specifically focus it around the air-cooled cars. I believe the water-cooled cars is a different debate, but in my view, anybody that tells you that a two-wheel drive 964 is better than a C4 because it gets the tail out, as everyone likes to say, is frankly total bollocks. I'm in the fortunate position to be able to race these cars, and I race other cars as well. And the last thing one needs when you're actually trying to get around a track fast, or anywhere for that matter, is to get the tail out. As soon as you start losing traction in any way, you basically are losing time. So losing traction is just of no, frankly, benefit whatsoever, other than, I don't know, some guys who like to watch Top Gear and see people sliding around tracks. So what a C4 does is it provides a really, really solid drive in terms of its ability to dive into a corner and come out of a corner because of its all-wheel traction. And the way in which that power is delivered very mechanically gives you the benefits of an all-wheel drive vehicle at the same time as having this kind of benefit of a Porsche, which a lot of people have grown to love. So in my view, as long as you put in coilover suspension and know how to adjust and set up a car, in my view, the C4 is as good, if not in certain instances, a better car than the C2. And anybody that tells you different is welcome to do so. And maybe they know a lot more than I do, but my preference, in fact, is pretty much split between the two. And in fact, I do, if pushed, prefer a C4 well set up, especially with a lightweight flywheel. So with that set aside, let's talk about one or two other small things about the car. The 964 is, in my opinion, the last of the usable, truly daily driver vehicles from the early 911s. This is a vehicle that's got, well, this one happens to have fully adjustable electric seats. It's incredibly comfortable. We're talking about airbags. The car's got aircon, not particularly efficient in today's terms, but it certainly has aircon. It's got heating, and it does an incredibly kind of capable job of giving you even in contemporary terms, a very comfortable and very capable drive. So in my view, given its size, given the kind of the power delivery, given the feel that it has, be that a C4 or a C2, it is, in my opinion, if you're searching for a true, and I mean a true, daily driver of a classic Porsche, depending on which part of the world you come from, the 964 is the only car that does it. I've been in the fortunate position to be able to drive earlier ones, to drive SCs, to drive water-cooled cars, etc. But in my view, on a true daily driver basis, be it in a hot climate or a cold climate, be it snow or sand, getting stuck in traffic, whatever the case may be, nothing beats a 964 in terms of its ability to deliver that wonderful blend of a classic, diminutive, understated 911, but at the same time, they kind of give you that blend of performance and comfort. Driving a 911T every day is a dream that everybody loves to live, but it isn't realistic unless you're on a permanent holiday, which not many of us are. This car is a true daily driver. I've taken it to many places and certainly intend to do more of that. Other little tips and tricks. The wheels on the car are Fuchsfelge wheels. This car has both the original Cup 1 wheels, and there's a very strong debate, and I certainly can't argue with that a 964 looks best on cups, and I certainly agree that a 964 does look particularly tidy on cup wheels. But, and I'm now even referring to not the aftermarkets, but in fact the original wheels, the original Cup 1 wheels are unfortunately quite heavy. So the net result of that is that you lose quite a bit in terms of, let's call it the sheer acceleration of the vehicle, and in fact to some extent, let's call it the litheness of its handling. So the Cup 1s look great, and in my opinion, really do suit the 964. But Fuchs, specifically the Fuchsfelge wheel, shaves a number of kilos off your unsprung weight, and that gives you a number of benefits in terms of the trackability of the car. In fact, the border driving kind of capability of the car, because obviously there's a lot less weight which is unsprung, which effectively comes down to the wheels. So I kind of swap between the two sets of wheels that we've got, and it's wonderful to feel the Cup 1s, especially at speed. They kind of plant the car in a wonderful way, and aesthetically very little beats them. But there is something about the kind of enduring appeal of a Fuchs wheel which no one can really ignore. Other things, we decided, or I decided, that that's kind of when we started to rebuild this car, that we would keep the original black interior, which we did, obviously with a few kind of aesthetic updates. We didn't go particularly crazy in terms of kind of giving it a kind of a super classic feel. One thing that I'm very, very kind of firm about is we need to start celebrating these cars for the respective decades in which they were made. Taking a car and backdating it is I guess to some extent understandable, because there's such an enduring appeal for the early cars, and trying to get a later car to look like an early car and give you all the benefits of a later car makes certainly sense. But taking a fully, let's call it, beautiful car in its own right, and then out of principle, I don't think it should be cut up into pieces and made to look like an earlier car. I think we can celebrate the fact that this design in its own right is very specific to a time period. It is wonderful and it is beautiful. And it doesn't, in my opinion, it's no better nor worse than an earlier, or for that matter, a later car. So trying to dress up mutton as lamb, or ironically lamb as mutton, isn't something which I'm much a kind of a fan of. We've done it in the past. It's not a bad thing, and I certainly don't claim to kind of say that it's right or wrong. It's just one of personal taste. So in my view, the 964, as it is right there in front of you, is a wonderfully clean, simple, and pure vehicle. It's an absolute daily driver, more so than any other of the water-cooled cars, in my view. The 993, again, I'm going to claim is much an air-cooled car with a water-cooled motor, and can't comment any further than that. It is a gem of a vehicle. Please stop buying them and cutting them up, turning them into something that they're not. But if you do it, please at least do it with a highly reputable company, and we know who they are. They do fantastic work. So if you do that, do it properly. If not, stick to a standard 964, do some key upgrades to it. We're doing a number of them at the moment, which we're quite proud of, and we'll certainly share some more of that information into the future. Hope that's been of some assistance if you're thinking of buying a 964. And again, thank you for watching.